Not convinced it ain't no acting or accident what the track emits. You strapped with gas that you ain't even practiced with. The fact is.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. We're going to be talking about Smackdown from December the 10th, 2021. A very interesting episode of Smackdown where I don't know how I feel about anything until I reminisce on it. Like, everything that happened, there were very little guttural reactions that I had on this show. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, that's interesting, or I don't care about that. So this is going to be like my first real me sitting back and reminiscing on the subject. So the show was what it was. I think it was kind of an off week because we didn't get a lot of heavy storytelling on this episode. So, but there were things that I'm sure they had to rewrite because they fired Jeff Hardy literally the day before. So, we're going to go through this show. So there was no Roman Reigns, which they didn't announce until everybody was in the building. They announced it in the opening segment that Roman wasn't there. But I don't think this show needed Roman, and Roman doesn't need to be there every week. Sometimes the strength of your character, you can be present without being there. And Roman's story was continued without him being there. He didn't need to be physically present. So he wasn't. That was good. And it's also good that, sometimes, you can give guys breaks and make triumphant returns after a week or two off. All right, so Roman didn't start the show, so who did? Surprise! Sami Zayn started the show. And Sami Zayn is in a wheelchair, saying that it took Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns to work together to put him in that wheelchair, and that he doesn't want to call it a conspiracy, even though he did call it a conspiracy, and said that he was robbed, but what hurt him more than the physical pain was the betrayal. And that he thought that Brock Lesnar was his friend, and now that means that he's going to have to sue. He's going to have to sue Adam Pearce, sue Roman Reigns, the referee, Sonya Deville, and everybody else involved. Paul Heyman comes out there. Paul Heyman then makes Jewish jokes that makes people feel very uncomfortable. Because he says, you're doing my people's thing. With the litigation, you're doing my people's thing. And says that my people run the entertainment industry. I'm like, Paul, what are you doing? You're giving it away. It's anti-Semitism when we say it. So is it like the N-word where if I use it, it's okay, but Paul can't say it because, you feel me? You feel me? That Star of David. Come on. Anyway, Paul makes some comments. He interrupts Sami Zayn and says that Sami Zayn should be ashamed of himself and told him shalom. Sami Zayn started, kind of bowing up on Paul, saying, Paul, I was not done speaking. Paul just kept talking, and he says, Paul, I wasn't done speaking. And then Paul steps in front of the hard cam, and Sami Zayn gets upset because Paul is in front of the hard cam. That's, Sami is standing up. And this is when we learn that Roman is not here, so there is no one to protect Paul Heyman. And we think that Sami Zayn is about to do something very bad to Paul Heyman. But nope, here comes Brock wearing overalls, stepping right out of 1938. Brock Lesnar bangs the announce table with a chair because he can, surprising everybody, myself included. I thought bad things was about to occur. Then he sits down and has a very polite conversation with Sami Zayn, in which he asks Sami how is he doing, and then said that he laughed a little bit and said we got off on the wrong foot, and then apologized to Sami Zayn for what he did, and said that we need to, we're both Canadians and Canadian alpha males, the two of us. And then he says, I did you a favor, Sami. You never would have beaten Roman Reigns. And the look on Sami Zayn's face was one of both confusion and offense, where he was kind of like, what? And then, Brock was like, look, just tell yourself the truth. Do you really believe you would have beaten Roman Reigns? And he's kind of like, And then he says, well, why don't we just get out of here? You and me, let's go to Saskatchewan. He asked him where he was from. First said he's Montreal. Brock did some really funny bad French, where that really upset Sami Zayn. He's like, we don't talk like that. We don't talk like that. Then he invited him to Saskatchewan with him. And so Sami Zayn breaks it down, says how, Brock did him a favor by beating him up before the match. It kind of invalidates Roman's win because he was beat up before Roman got in the ring. Therefore, he never really got a fair chance. Therefore, he can always just say he got screwed. Did Brock do him a favor? Then Brock says, let's go hunting and fishing, and Sami Zayn starts talking about being a vegan. He's like, I'm a vegan, and I'm like, this was great. Then Brock, kind of he's going to physically remove Sami Zayn from this place. So he goes and he starts pushing Sami Zayn in his wheelchair near the ropes. Now Paul's still in the ring watching this garbage take place. And Paul says that, he must have spent too much time in the dispensary and the edibles are kicking in. And he says, 3 years ago or whatever, this would have led to Suplex City. This is not about Canadian alpha males going moose hunting. And then he starts going into the Brock Lesnar. And that amps Brock up. And he destroys the male nurses, which was hilarious. That he even had male nurses. And then he beats up Sami Zayn. Gives Sami Zayn an F5. And Paul Heyman, of course, after starting this nonsense, he got the hell out of there. Because, why would you want to be around for the rest of this? Later, Brock says, when he was asked why would he come out there, he said, ask my advocate, Paul Heyman. And he was like, ooh, are they still working together? So that, of course, you know what that means. Enter Kayla Braxton to the town gossip. She comes in and she asks Paul, is he still the advocate for Brock Lesnar? And he asked her to please stop asking him that question. And then she said, what about Roman Reigns? What is he going to think? And she asked her not to ask that either. And he answered neither one of them and left. So this was very, very interesting. The Brock Lesnar stuff wasn't over because he went and intimidated Adam Pearce, which is my favorite part of the show. This was my favorite part of the show, is when Brock Lesnar decided he was going to go over to Adam Pearce and press Adam Pearce against the wall, which is absolutely hilarious. This is complete and total Brock Lesnar lives in a bubble, and everything about him is absolutely weird. Not only does he have Viking hair now, but he's walking around in overalls, which is totally not surprising considering he lives on a farm and he grew up on one. But then after he backs Adam Pearce into this wall, Adam Pearce is very scared. He remembers the last time the two of them were in a room together. Brock thanked him for the time off and says he hopes that the $1 million went to a good charity. Then he says, while he was off, he had time to do his favorite thing, which is hunting. So he went and hunted a moose, 2,000-pound moose. And then he says that he wanted to show him a picture of it. The picture didn't work because he had a razor phone. He had a razor phone. I had a razor phone in 2007. Brock's phone is literally 10 generations behind everybody else's. No wonder nobody can get in contact with this guy. No wonder you need to send like a smoke signal or something out there in order to get the guy on the phone. He got a flip phone, which he then proceeded to snap in half with his angrily because the phone wouldn't work. Then after he slammed the phone down, he starts explaining how this moose he murdered. He killed this moose. And then he gutted the moose and he removed the moose's guts. It was about 225 pounds of moose guts that he yanked out of this animal. Then he strung it up and butchered it, cooked it and ate it. And And Adam Pearce is he's sweating bullets at this point. If this was an anime, he'd probably like have like the rapid sweat going down his head. Then he says that he put the moose's head on the wall because he always wanted to remember this prized 2,000-pound moose that he killed and ate. And he says that he always wanted to commemorate this moose, so he gave it a name. He says, I named it after you. I named him Pierce. And Adam Pearce had the nerve to say, thanks. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, Brock is a killer of things and an eater of things, which is excellent stuff. I'm glad they just decided to go with full hunting man Brock. I know it makes some people uncomfortable. I did see some people were so uncomfortable with the Brock and the hunting and all that kind of stuff. But hunting is something guys do. It makes Brock relatable, believe it or not. You know, babyface Brock is so much fun because he's being intimidating and not really trying. At the same time, he kind of is, where he's applying pressure, like how his hands are like frying pans and they're smacking Adam Pearce on the shoulders and on the back. You know, they heavy. They're like pop. And you're like, whoa, like, is he punching him? Like, no, he's just slapping him on the back like a good buddy. And him talking about killing and eating this moose to Adam Pearce is absolutely fantastic babyface stuff because it's not a direct threat about him killing and eating Adam Pearce, but it is in some ways a very thinly veiled indirect threat about him killing and eating Adam Pearce. Cannibal Brock. This shit rules, man. This is really good. I have fun with Brock as a babyface, man. I love that he gets to show occasionally different sides of the character, but I think this is probably the most of the personal Brock we've ever seen. With him talking about his hobbies and the things that he likes to do, and it all involves, and they made sure to limit this, and we don't care like Brock likes to play checkers or anything like that. So we're going to keep it simple. Brock likes to hunt. Hunting can be made to be very violent and gory and brutal. And it all fits the Brock Lesnar persona perfectly, you know, because we believe that he's a human bear for almost 20 years now. We're coming up on a 20-year anniversary of Brock Lesnar's debut soon. We're going to be almost 2 decades in. And, you know, we've been told that this guy is a killing machine this entire time. So him being a hunter shouldn't be a surprise. You know, I think he should probably start wearing camouflage. That's just me though. You know, like they made Barry Windham wear camouflage before. I think if they put Brock in camouflage, it'd be dope. You know, like a hunting jacket and camouflage gear and stuff like that. It'd be really fun. So I really love babyface Brock. This shit rules, man. You know, he's a farm boy. He's a hunter. He just but he's also one of the baddest dudes to walk the earth. So he's intimidating, even when he's not trying to be. And I like how Paul Heyman is the trigger. You know, he was being friendly. He was being nice. And then Paul came over there with that BS. And all of a sudden, the male nurses and Sami Zayn had a rough night. And that was good stuff. That was good storytelling. That was good stuff, man. And I liked it. It was fun. You know, so now Roman, of course, has something to respond to because we see Brock and Paul interacting and Paul not directly saying that he is not Brock Lesnar's advocate, but he did say that he could quite possibly be the Universal Champion. So we're creeping up very much on slowly but surely, inch by inch, on Roman probably killing Paul. And I said this from the beginning. That's I think the natural way of this story ending and going forward is the babyface run of Paul Heyman. It's been a long time since Paul Heyman was a babyface. And usually Paul Heyman as a babyface involves ECW. That's the only thing he's a babyface for is ECW. But having Roman kick Paul out of the bloodline and beat him up because he can't trust him, that would be within Roman's character, because Roman's character is paranoid. As bad kings, tyrants, bad, weak kings, they tend to be paranoid. If you think about Commodus from Gladiator, had all this power, but he was so worried about this little boy. Always so worried about his sister and who his sister was hanging out with, who she was talking to. That kind of paranoia is indicative of king type of characters. And Roman is already paranoid, and he thought the Usos were going to turn against him. Thought Jey Uso or thought Jimmy was against him. Now he's going to, he's already thinking about Paul. And now Paul has kind of created this more of this thing. So it ought to be really fun to see how they interact going forward. And I think that we have to end this story. And maybe day one ends with Roman killing Paul, and having to, beat up Paul and put him in a guillotine choke or something. And we write Paul off for a little while. And then Paul comes back with Brock. And that's probably going to be the third match, and this time with Paul and Brock's corner, that could be the idea. Or we could, I don't know how far we got until day one, because we could have Roman kill Paul next week, take a couple of weeks off, and then he returns with Brock for day one. That could be fun too. So, but I think that Paul, if they're telling the story properly, Paul getting beat up is inevitable. It has to happen, So let's talk about the rest of the show, because Brock Lesnar did indeed steal the show. He was the most fun part of the show for sure. The rest of the show wasn't nearly as fun. Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs defeated Los Lotharios in what was essentially a squash match. This was not good. Nakamura once again wrestles without even a contender for the Intercontinental Championship. I feel like I'm repeating myself if I was to go down the rabbit hole and talk about him not defending the belt that he's had for like 4 months now. Kofi is hanging out with Mansoor, Ricochet, the Viking Raiders, and Drew Gulak as they have a new crown for Xavier Woods. Got a new crown for him. They unveiled this gigantic toy of a crown. It looks awful. It looks gaudy. It's huge and obnoxious. And at this point, it kind of slaps in the face of what Xavier Woods said before about the crowns not mattering and all that kind of stuff. Because he went and got a bigger, more obnoxious crown. He didn't go and get a crown that was, similar in size to the one he already had. He went and got a grander, bigger, more pointy, golder crown. It's an absolute prop. It doesn't look like anything any normal person would wear. And he's still dressed like Captain Crunch. And all these guys were clapping, and I'm just like, wow, this is nuts. So Xavier Woods then proclaims New Day the greatest tag team in WWE history, and said no disrespect to the Viking Raiders because they were there. They were present. So they had a match against the Usos and the New Day in RK Bro. RK Bro was there for the Brand to Brand Invitational. This gave us an opportunity to have Riddle on all 3 shows this week. Riddle was on all 3 shows. We had way too much Riddle this week. Riddle did a skit with the Jackass Boys where Johnny Knoxville showed him the hook and ladder, which is when you just grab a guy by the balls. I don't know. Apparently there's going to be another Jackass movie. And I'm saying to myself, is there still 50-year-old guys that watched MTV back then that still likes this kind of shit? Like these dudes, were stapling their balls to their thigh. Like it was funny when I was 17 or whatever it was when I was watching that stuff. I can't imagine watching that shit today. I I can't imagine doing it today. I can't believe they're still doing it. I remember when I first found out they used to go on tour and do this stuff. So I was sitting here like they ended up being pretty fucking rich. But I was like, they go on tour. They have a stage show where they staple things to their forehead and set themselves on fire. Like, I thought they just did that for TV. Like, no, they had shows where they were doing this stuff. Because I remember one of them is Steve O got hurt at one of their little shows or whatever. I was kind of like, what the fuck kind of show are they having? Like, I can't imagine doing that, let alone going on a tour where you come up with these goofy things you're going to do to yourself. And then I found out about deathmatch wrestling, which I already knew about because I watched ECW, but I didn't know that deathmatch wrestling was like every other kind of wrestling where they had traveling shows. I thought maybe you just showed up, people hit each other with fiberglass and all that kind of stuff, and then we moved on. See you next month or something like that. But no, they was hitting the road. I was like, what the hell? Every day? Every other day? A couple of times a week? What kind of horseshit is that? Well, whatever. But anyway, we had too much Riddle on the programming this week. All three brands. He hit the trifecta. So on this show, they had the triple threat tag team match. Who was the best tag team in WWE? That was the hook for this match. So the Raw tag team champions, SmackDown tag team champions, and the New Day were on this. I'm saying clearly Imperium is probably looking like, Mustache Mountain is probably like, but technically they're developmental, so it doesn't matter. But the New Day win the match. Not surprised at all that they won the match. They beat them with a foot stomp backbreaker thing. I'm kind of over the foot stomps though. I think more time I see foot stomps involved with the finish. I mean, the Lucha Brothers, it was a foot stomp involved with the finish. 5150, there was a foot stomp involved in the finish. You're like, okay, that's enough. That's enough with the top rope foot stomps, okay? It doesn't look good enough for everybody to be doing it. Change it. I like the Midnight Hour as a finish anyway. But I get it that the Midnight Hour is one of the two guys in Big E. But they should, I'm pretty sure one of them could have lifted one of the Usos. Come on. In any event, this match was very good. And they worked it as smart as possible because they milked the shit out of that hot tag. They knew that the people wanted Randy Orton in the ring. They milked that Randy Orton hot tag for what seems like 15 minutes. They milked the shit out of that hot tag. Unfortunately, when they finally did do the hot tag, Randy threw a couple of clotheslines and spent the rest of the time outside the ring. Back dropping guys onto tables. So it was a good match, pretty good match. Usos and the New Day, they don't miss. They do a good job, but I don't get it. I don't get why we had to do this match. I don't see why, they lost, but this is continuing the Usos and their downslide. And it also continues the upswing of the New Day. So I'm guessing that's another thing Roman's going to have to address is the repeated losses by the New Day. So good. Just get rid of that goddamn crown. I wish somebody would have pitched that bitch into the crowd. I hate it so much already. All right, so the SmackDown Warrior, who was apparently born in SmackDown, he wasn't born in Scotland like he was on Raw. They must have found his birth certificate, and it said born in Edinburgh, SmackDown or some shit. Who cares? Drew McIntyre went to confront Adam Pearce about not being put in the Black Friday Battle Royal. He's not over it. He ain't over that. Adam Pearce then blamed it on Sonya Deville and then said that a higher authority is the one who said that the match was fine and that all the participants were cleared. And then he said the higher authority doesn't want the sword at ringside. So Drew McIntyre, being the complete and total douchebag that he is, stabbed his desk with a sword. Completely unnecessary. Completely unnecessary. Later, Madcap Moss and Happy Corbin would steal that desk with the sword in it. And don't get it. Why would you take the whole desk? Unless there's a reason for you to take the whole desk, you could have just pulled the sword out of the desk. Corbin's a big, strong boy. You got to pull that sword out of that desk. I'm not thrilled whatsoever by a Corbin McIntyre feud. I know they've already kind of been teetering around feuding. This also involved Jeff Hardy before Jeff Hardy got shit canned. But I'm not thrilled about a Happy Corbin McIntyre feud. Corbin doesn't have any heat. And McIntyre isn't booked properly. But, so I'm not thrilled about that. But on this particular show, McIntyre wrestled Sheamus, and they had a hell of a match. They always have a hell of a match. I don't see why we had to have a clean finish here. Why couldn't Sheamus build up some momentum? Unless McIntyre is about to do something drastic in the terms of moving up the card, I don't see why he had to beat Sheamus here. I don't really see why we had to have a clear winner here anyway. Cesaro was watching, but he didn't need to do anything. And Ridge Holland was not there. He did not make an appearance at all. Odd decision making. It seemed like a right time to do Sheamus and Ridge Holland versus Drew McIntyre and Cesaro. It seemed like this was a prime opportunity to have Ridge Holland interfere and then have Cesaro come in and make the save and have all the European guys on one segment, which I know is probably racism, right? Because it's racism if all the Mexicans are in one segment. Wait a minute, what am I talking about? Anyway, Drew McIntyre wins with the Claymore. Good stuff. Good finish. I like the finish, and I just wish Drew McIntyre was doing something. He has been so aimless since he lost the title. Him and Bianca Belair have Bianca Belair is feuding with somebody. But they've been mostly aimless since losing the title. And it's basically you get put in that holding pattern where, you're not the biggest star on the roster anymore. You're not the champ anymore. But you're one of the top guys. So we're going to protect you. And that protection sometimes means that you can't really feud with anybody because it might diminish you to feud with the wrong kinds of people. But you have to feud with somebody. So, we're going to find a lower mid-card feud in order to keep you busy for a while. And that's what they're both doing. And it's unfortunate. So, Naomi is finally going to get her hands on Sonya Deville. And I told you it wasn't going to happen. I told you it wasn't going to happen. Sonya Deville got a new theme song. She also got a new gear. She's wearing a cat suit. She looked awesome. She looked tremendous. She got on the microphone, said Natalya was the new ring announcer and Shayna Baszler was going to be the timekeeper. No bell actually rang because Shayna Baszler started coming towards the ring with a hammer. Naomi dropped her with a forearm or something. Then she kicked Natalya off the ring apron. Sonya then fled. They encircled the ring. And then lightning struck. And we got Xia Li making her debut. And of course, all the heels were frozen solid because apparently when somebody's coming to the ring, you just stop doing what you're doing. Makes perfect sense in WWE logic. Makes perfect sense. Somebody's coming to the ring. Let's just wait on them. So Xia Li's entrance involved a lot of lightning. It looked like something out of Dragon Ball, of course. She's wearing the headgear like Raiden from Mortal Kombat. She did her usual, I guess you want to say shadow boxing kind of thing. She came to the ring, a house of fire, and the heels just lined up to get beat up, which, probably could have looked a lot better. And I think they probably would have done it better in a different era where she probably would have had an opportunity to really get out there and bump these girls. But she didn't look very polished at first. And then they kind of let her do her stuff. Because I guess they had to explain what she was going to do. So she hit Natalya with a spinning back fist. Or it's really a spinning back elbow. And then a very light roundhouse kick. She's really lighting up on that roundhouse. And she nailed Sonya Deville, not Sonya Deville, but Shayna Baszler with a roundhouse kick. And Sonya Deville bailed out before she really got hers. And Naomi and Xia Li took the ring. There was no match. I knew there wasn't going to be a match. But the debut of Xia Li was very good, very impactful, very interesting. And I think this actually was better than the match. You know, giving this platform to Xia Li is probably better than any match they would have had. Injected her into one of their longest running feuds, and one of their feuds that still has heat, because Sonya Deville still has heat. And instead of Naomi getting beat up and left laying, for the first time, she feels like she's got some real backup. And Xia Li is in a position where she can look good, she can shine a little bit. So I like this. I liked her interest. I loved her interest. They didn't change her theme music either, at least not yet. So she got the same theme song she had in NXT, but they basically just gave her a babyface version of her entrance. So instead of fire, it's lightning. When she did the NXT entrance, it was fire. It was like a kumite where you had the torches and stuff like that. Here, it's a little bit more child friendly. Hate to put it, but a little bit more anime, even though China doesn't have anime, where it's lightning and it's just a nice little moon and explosions and stuff like that. It looked really badass, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. I think it's probably one of the better entrances they've ever put together for, you know, somebody to do the whole what's it called, augmented reality, virtual reality, or whatever. It looked pretty badass, you know. So Xia Li, they seem to be taking her seriously, you know. Still gonna have to wait for that Naomi and Sonya Deville thing, but I kind of figured we was gonna do that. So next week is likely gonna be Xia Li and Naomi versus Natalya and Shayna Baszler. So we finally get probably Xia Li's first match. If they let Xia Li uncork one of these kicks, it's gonna be something. I mean, she kicked Mercedes Martinez, and the next time we saw her, she was in Impact. She literally kicked her to Nashville from Florida. So I'm talking like almost literally. Like, she kicked her so hard, she was knocked unconscious, and when she woke up, she was in Nashville. And we need that Xia Li, but she's not gonna get away with that. Especially with some of the Golden Girls that's on SmackDown. Nah, she ain't gonna be able to get away with that. So hopefully she learned. They practiced them kicks, because boy, if she starts letting them legs loose, it's gonna be trouble. All right, so the last segment to discuss is the Charlotte Flair Toni Storm segment, and it begins with Sasha Banks being an exposition machine, coming over to Toni as she's loosening up, talking about Toni's training in Japan and her time in NXT and how she's a fan of Toni. And no, there is no greater hybrid wrestler on the roster than Toni Storm. And that she's never seen Charlotte so upset, so angry, and so humiliated as she's seen her today. So her advice was for Toni to take it easy, let Charlotte make a mistake, and then take advantage of that mistake. And then they fake laughed together. And I was like, oh boy, this is not going to go well. This ain't going to go well at all. Of course, they push Sasha in this to really try to help Toni get over a little bit more, which is a good thing. You know, lend a hand whenever you can. So they had the match, Toni Storm and Charlotte Flair. Toni Storm was wearing short shorts. Respectfully speaking, she was, the things were thanging. Let's put it like that. So the match in and of itself was not a lot. It was very short. It was about 5 minutes maybe. Toni got a couple of moves in, but not much. They were telling the story of Charlotte being very offended and upset. Charlotte kind of got a jump start on her with a sucker punch, and that put Toni on the defense for a little while. Toni has some decent counters. She actually was able to nail a German suplex. They kind of botched the double moonsault spot that Charlotte likes to do, and I think it was because Toni was out of position. She might have been, or maybe Charlotte kind of overshot the second moonsault. But it was still a solid match. They did the spot where Toni hit her head on the ring post, and she was kind of dazed, and then Charlotte started to kick her. Then she didn't stop, and this led to disqualification. Then afterwards, because she was already beat up, Charlotte just kicked her a couple of more, just stomped her in the corner like Stone Cold Steve Austin and beat her up a little bit more just to get some heat. Get that heat, baby. And of course, I saw people complaining about this and saying it didn't make Tony look very good. And I'm like, we don't need to 50-50 book everything. You don't need to 50-50 book it. You know, let Charlotte getting over is a good thing. You know, it should build sympathy for Tony. She's not a badass babyface. The only time you should be complaining about a babyface selling too much is if that's fucking Bill Goldberg. You know, that's the only time. Or if it's like, you know, if it's like Brock Lesnar or Bill Goldberg or somebody, some powerhouse babyface. And even then, Hogan would sell most of the match. The big comeback is where the babyface's money is. And they don't need to make a comeback every single time. You know, so in this instance, they told the story of why Tony couldn't fight back. She hit her head on the ring post. So she wasn't going to make a fiery comeback. It wouldn't have made any sense for her to do so. The entire ending angle was that she banged her head on the ring post. And now Charlotte is taking advantage of that by stomping her and kicking her. So, no, it doesn't make sense for Tony to make a comeback. And no, she doesn't need to look strong. She looks strong when it's time for her to make her comeback. And she's going to end up making her comeback probably in the match when they eventually have a match. Now, this was a championships contenders match. And Toni Storm did win it by disqualification. So I'm guessing she is entitled to a title match. Likely will be announced at day one eventually. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say Toni Storm is going to win that match. And they're not going to bury Charlotte by having Tony beat her clean with the Storm Zero, and that's going to be it. It'll likely be some type of roll-up, small package shenanigans. But I can definitely see Tony winning that match. And it's from the way that they're booking Charlotte. They're booking Charlotte being super strong, which is a good thing because you want Charlotte to look strong. So when she gets beaten, it makes you look strong for beating her. That's the point of this whole thing that we're talking about here. Which is why you can't 50-50 book everything and have, you know, Tony shrugging off stuff and fighting back. This match started psychologically with a cheap shot. Tony had to make a small comeback in the middle of the ring, and she was able to do so. She hit a basement drop kick, you know, did some pretty good stuff as far as the German suplex is concerned. But you're also going to tell the story of the experience. That, you know, Tony has been training, but Tony's very young. She's only like 25 or 26. Charlotte is 10 years older than she is and has been doing this for about 10 years. So you got that difference there too. I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was the best match either one of them could have, but I think it told a functional story that made sense. And of course they bailed out on the finish because why would you're going to make people pay for the finish, of course. You only got two options. In order to get a respectable finish out of this, you only got two options. Either you beat the champion, in which case you make Charlotte look weak again, and then Tony can just beat the champion. So, you know, you'd steal a little bit from her beating Charlotte for the title, or you have Charlotte beat her, in which case you killed her. There's no reason to have a rematch if Tony loses. So your best way out of this thing is to put Tony in a situation where she can't fight back, but you keep her alive because she did technically win the match. And then you ump the ante. You take the ante a little bit higher. And that's what they did here. They took it a little bit higher. We went from throwing pies. We went from words to throwing pies in each other's faces to now we've escalated to serious physical assault. You know, when you're kicking a downed opponent who is barely conscious, you're committing crimes now. You know, it's not just mere humiliation. We've upped the ante. We're slowly increasing the violence level here. So that's a good thing, you know. But they gotta make Tony whole, and that's gonna always be the problem. When it comes to heels winning programs, that's gonna be the big issue. Is you can't have the heel win the program in the end. You know, Bianca needs to be made whole. Liv Morgan needs to be made whole. Tony needs to be made whole. You gotta have them. You gotta give them their win back. Now on Raw, you got two different people who need to get their win back. Liv Morgan and Bianca Belair. I think the story is already written for Bianca. So too bad for Liv. But on SmackDown, you've got that Toni Storm situation. She's the only one. So I guess you got Shotzi too, but she hasn't been on TV since she wrestled at Survivor Series. Maybe she got hurt or something. At least I hate to say it, but at least I hope she got hurt or something. And it's not just that she's sitting and catering with all that makeup on. That's a bad do. In any event, I think Toni is going to win the title. I truly believe that now. Basically, by the way that they're booking her to be a sympathetic babyface. They're booking her like a babyface should be booked. She's going to be a Ricky Morton babyface. She's not going to be Bill Goldberg, which means she's going to sell. She's going to get beat up. She's going to make Charlotte look good. She's going to shine Charlotte up. So when the time comes, Charlotte's going to do the job. At least that's the way it should go. Now, we are talking about WWE here. So I'm not going to bet my life on it or anything. I'm just saying. Conventional storytelling would say Toni Storm was going to win the title in the end. And start the new year with something fresh. But can't make any guarantees. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace.
Old non-aggression. Once that lesson sets in, you'll see a session. But you got an affection for no progression. Regret.